As we think about measuring flourishing, we need to think about that mysterious and elusive quality that makes us feel most alive. And vitality is as close as we get to that. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Christina Frederick, who will talk about just that. Welcome, Christina.
Well, thank you all very much. I am just so honored to be here today to talk to you and listening to these really inspiring talks. And I was thinking about, Marcelo and Wendy presenting on the more global perspective and MC presenting on some very cutting edge measurement. And I feel like I'm kind of taking it down to a real micro level to really talk about a construct that I've been involved in and researching over the last 30 years and really hopefully giving some of you some practical and useful information about that. So yeah, I'll be talking about this notion of vitality, the energy behind flourishing. And so we'll talk a little bit about how it was conceptualized, how it relates to self-determination theory, how we measure it, some of the research that is shown to be important with vitality, and then some ideas for the future. So vitality or subjective vitality, as we sometimes call it, is that experience of possessing energy and aliveness. And we all know what that feels like when we feel vitality, right? So this idea of measuring vitality really came around in the early 90s as part of the dissertation I was doing, examining the outcomes of sport and exercise participation and motivation. And we were talking about what do we want to measure? How are we going to do that? And, we talked about some of the outcomes as being depression or anxiety, very traditional measures. But the one that we kept coming back to was, this feeling that you feel like you have more energy. You feel like you're more engaged with life. You feel vital. And so with that in mind, we created this thing called the subjective vitality scale to really take it to a very applied level and measure the vitality that we feel across situations. The subjective vitality concept is really embedded in self-determination theory. And so those of you who are familiar with it, it's a positive psychology theory looking at human motivation that assumes a very organismic perspective, that healthy people are actively engaged in the world. We seek out new experiences that align with our goals and values. We want to learn, we want to grow, we're very curious. And self-determination theory also talks about three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And so what we find is that the initial research really showed that when those needs are met, vitality tends to be enhanced. So your environments are very important for fostering vitality. We also know that vitality more specifically relates to autonomy. So when we act autonomously, right, when we have choicefulness, and that means really not just that our behavior is not externally controlled, but it's not internally self-controlled, the more energy or vitality we have freed up for living. So embedded in that, we also then, of course, talked about how vitality could be measured, because the research paradigm of self-determination theory is an incredibly active empirical paradigm. And so the constructs that we're using really do need to be measured. And so we created originally the subjective vitality scale, which was it's just a simple questionnaire, a simple survey, 5 or 7 item measure that looks at both state and trait vitality. And newer measure we have is the subjective vitality depletion scale. So that's more of a 6 item measure that looks at not only how vital we feel, but what happens when we don't feel vital. Right? It measures depletion. So these are copies of those simple scales. I guess we're pretty old school now, but tends to work, and it's been a pretty productive research paradigm. So what does it all mean, though? What does vitality relate to? And the research in vitality isn't just hasn't certainly been just me. It's been a group of researchers working within self-determination theory and even outside self-determination theory to look at the importance of vitality as it relates to many things. But my focus really today is how it relates to wellness, how it relates to human flourishing. So we know that vitality and mindfulness are related, and vitality and peace of mind are related. So researchers like you and researchers like Brown and Ryan have shown that vitality is enhanced when you have peace of mind. Vitality is positively related to higher levels of mindfulness. So we have, when we're feeling more well, vitality flourishes also. We also know that when we're in the right environment, right, and what we call an autonomy supportive environment, vitality can be maintained, even when we're engaged in what we call ego depleting tasks. So ego depleting tasks are those things that many of us do every day at work, right? We look at long lists. We send email after email. We review patterns of behavior on spreadsheets, right? Those can all be very ego depleting. But if you're in the right environment, right, within that work environment, your vitality may not be affected, negatively affected, right? We also know that being in nature, right, and engaged in outside activity, something as simple as taking a walk, right, enhances vitality. There are some areas that really, I think, are ripe for newer research. One of the projects that I'm currently engaged in, and which is incredibly complicated, honestly, is how do indoor environments affect vitality? So inspired by the effects we had of quarantining and now the going back to the office movement, right? Why are people not wanting to go back to the office? Well, maybe it's because their feelings of vitality are affected, as they were during quarantining, right? So we want to know what aspects of an indoor environment affect our feelings of vitality, and can we understand that, and can we change those environments to be more health sustaining, to support our wellness and our vitality, rather than be draining. The other area that's really important to look at is how do relationships and love affect feelings of vitality. So I look back to Barry's talk on love. Barry, maybe you and I should talk later about maybe some joint work, some multidisciplinary work on how relationships and love affect vitality, because those are so crucial to all of us. So with that, I'll just finish up and say thank you. And these are the references used in this talk, and I'm happy to share any slides or have any conversations after. So thank you very much.